Welcome to DRT, Direct Real Talk with the Arizona Department of Real Estate. I'm Assistant Commissioner for the Enforcement and Compliance Division, Liz Recchia. This podcast is designed to bring you information and insight into the world of the Arizona Department of Real Estate. The department is obligated to comply with the law and with the Arizona Administrative Code. But how the department makes decisions and the considerations brought to that decision-making is interesting and necessary to understand, since the mission of the department is to protect the public interest through licensure and regulation of the real estate profession in Arizona. There have been a lot of changes in education and more to come. In this episode, we will try to help schools, instructors, and licensees understand what has changed and look forward to what may change. To help us learn more, Commissioner Nicholson will describe her vision for education. Deputy Commissioner Mandy Neat and Assistant Commissioner Elena Kowaleski will describe the creation and purpose of the 1-hour CE classes, changes being made in assessment of CE course approvals, updating the salesperson pre-licensing instruction, and a new and upcoming property management CE course. I caught up with Commissioner Nicholson, Mandy, and Elena in the Commissioner's office. Let's join the conversation. There have been a lot of changes in education and more to come. Let's try to help schools, instructors, and licensees understand what has changed and look forward to what may change. To help us learn more, Commissioner Nicholson will describe her vision for education, Deputy Commissioner Mandy Neat, and Assistant Commissioner Elena Kowaleski will describe the creation and purpose of the 1-hour CE classes, changes being made in assessment of CE course approvals, updating the salesperson pre-licensing instruction, and a new and upcoming property management CE course. So let's start with you, Commissioner. Please give us the broad overview of real estate education and the content requirement changes you wish to see.
Oh, there's been quite a lot in the area of education as far as change. The first is there's mandatory education that licensees are going to have to complete in order to renew their license on deed fraud, on fire, and on water. And one of the big compliments that I can give to Governor Hobbs's administration is that the cabinet comes together and we don't live in these silos. We very much take a high-level view of what are the challenges that the people of Arizona are facing across the board and how, as government, can we come in and help. And the Department of Real Estate sometimes has a little small piece where we can be a part of that solution. So those 3 courses are us being a part of a solution. It's working with the Attorney General's office against deed fraud crimes and seller impersonation. It's working with the Department of Water Resources and water providers and people who actually have water rights to help licensees understand water better so that they can better educate their clients and clients can make decisions that are informed and educated decisions about their real estate purchases. And then, of course, there's FIRE. And FireWise is a program that's been developed to help property owners understand how to put forward the best defense of their property from wildfires. And the fewer properties that become subject to wildfires, the better chance we have of lowering homeowners' insurance rates and bringing more insurance businesses back into the state of Arizona to create a more competitive marketplace. So those are 3 of the first ones. And then during my first year, it became very apparent that a lot of brokerages were not understanding what they needed to do or what the Department of Real Estate expected them to do with regard to property management trust accounts. And that became a process where we actually went to the legislature and were successful in making some legislative changes, because it's only fair if the mark of what a company needs to do doesn't constantly change. You can't have one auditor hold you to one expectation and then had you received a different auditor, it was a different expectation. So now those expectations for trust funds and accounting is spelled out in statutory law. And that industry will be able to see much more consistency and have much more clarity in exactly what they need to do. But when you change the law, you also need to push out that education. And so for brokerages that do practice property management, the broker management clinic, there are 3-hour sessions that are required, BMC1, BMC2, BMC3. And now BMC3 will actually split and have 2 different tracks. And so if you are a residential brokerage or a commercial brokerage, you're going to take the standard BMC3 track. But if you are engaged in property management, you're going to take a property management specific track in renewing your broker license so that you're up to date on the department's expectations and the statutory changes. And then other than that, the industry has changed. Hopefully, anyone listening to the podcast, that's not news to them. The National Association of Realtors did a settlement on an antitrust lawsuit. And in that settlement, they've dynamically changed how their members are going to have to interact with the public in real estate transactions. In doing so, I think the reaction of the marketplace was, capitalism. I think people saw opportunities. And for the first time in a very long time, we're starting to see other people produce types of contracts and forms. And we've had to evaluate that at the Department of Real Estate. And our team came together to really say, what do our licensees need to know and understand in this different real estate environment so that they can continue to best protect the public in real estate transactions. And that's going to mean a lot of education and outreach to our instructors and our educators. And that's going to be a lot of revisions to some courses that have already been approved because the dynamics of the real estate market have changed, and we need to meet that and continue to offer the best education to our licensees so that our licensees are prepared to go and do the best job for their clients and the people of Arizona. It's fluid. It seems to change constantly. Every day you come in and there could be something new that has popped up, and we get our team together and we discuss it. But I think it's important to me and my team that licensees and the public understand, again, we come from a background of being brokers and practitioners on this leadership team at the Department of Real Estate. And it's not people who have never been on the battlefield per se that are trying to roll out different policies and changes. It's people who very much understand the intricacies of a real estate transaction that are trying to equip licensees with what they need to be successful out there.
So now let's go to Mandy and Elena. You've both worked very hard to create content and establish criteria to assess course content compliance with the Commissioner's vision of high quality real estate education. So tell us about the 1-hour CE classes, why 1 hour, and why these topics: water, deed fraud, and FireWise.
Well, thank you so much for the question about the 1 hour credit hours. First of all, one thing Commissioner Nicholson did a great job of is coming into the department and giving more flexibility and education for licensees to be able to actually receive continuing education. In doing so, she made it possible where you could take 50 minutes at a time and receive 1 credit hour. So you can mush them together and get 3 credit hours, 2 credit hours, but at the end of the day, we have 3 brand new 50-minute segments for you to go learn about as a licensee, and the public to be able to go to their licensees and really engage and understand things that will matter to them. So let's just get started. Elena, if you want to join me here, about how important it is for them to learn about FireWise. I mean, my mind was completely blown when we wrote that course as a team and learned about defensible space. Would you go into a little more about why the governor said it was so important and how that's going to help us?
I'd be happy to. So I think that it is first and foremost, right, and as Arizonians, we are lucky that we don't have hurricanes or tornadoes, but we are unfortunate in the fact that we do have a lot of fires. And it is unfortunate that insurance companies are starting to pull out and or raise their rates due to the wildfires that we encounter here in Arizona. So by the governor making it her mission for us to educate our licensees on the complexities of fire preparedness, I think that it was a great opportunity for us to create education based around fires, what we could do to prevent them, and what to do as licensees to make sure that our clients are prepared when selling and buying property in Arizona.
I love learning in Firewise about the fact that so many communities in Arizona are already using the program, a program that's mandated in California and utilized here in Arizona now. And the more people we can get to adopt this and work with our sister agency, the Department of Insurance and Financial Institutions, what a great way to be the first line to assist people in getting more insurances and to understand that grass fires are a huge part of wildfires. I mean, I look at my mom's yard now after writing that course with all of you, and I go, Mom, take out the grass. It's fuel to the fire. It will harm your house. Just those little things that a practitioner can take and work with their consumer and really make a difference. It was just awesome, and I can't wait for all practitioners to understand that. And then we move into water, and what a misunderstood source in Arizona and how to get people the right information. I've been extremely spoiled in my 22 years here in Maricopa County as a real estate practitioner. The water conversation in Maricopa County really only led to a few places that you really had to dig in. But then you look at it and you go, wells, where are they getting the water? Canals. I mean, what do you think about the water class, Elena?
Water is something that I have been infatuated with learning. When I moved to Arizona and I got into the real estate industry, the number one topic that I was interested in learning about was water. The clients that I represented, they always asked, so am I on private? Am I on city? Is my water hauled? Do I have a well? Where does that come from? What's the CAT project? Do we get water from the Colorado River? Well, that's a great question. So when I couldn't answer all of their questions, I immersed myself in educating myself on water and where it comes from in Arizona. And I think a lot of our licensees, they haven't gotten that education throughout the years that they've been in business. And I think that this is a wonderful opportunity for us to not only share our knowledge, but it continues to change. And I think that that's something that our licensees need to be updated with regularly, of where our water is coming from and what impact that has on their clients.
And the legislation in water is continually changing. And for the Department of Real Estate to be able to work with the Arizona Department of Water Resources and use those sources to get out to the licensees to pass on to their clients, it's just so awesome. Then both Elena Kowaleski and myself, Deputy Neat, had the amazing ability, because of Commissioner Nicholson's connections, to go meet with the criminal division of the Attorney General's office and also the Consumer Protection Division of the Attorney General's office and talk about deed fraud. And deed fraud is not going away, because fraud never goes away, but how do we slow it down and educate people on the red flags and what a licensee should knowingly know? So now we're teaching licensees what to look out for and when to say no. Elena, you've helped stop firsthand, because you have been our conduit for most of our deed fraud cases with the Attorney General's office. How much have you stopped now that you've calculated in the stealing of other people's properties here in Arizona?
Well, Mandy, the proof is in the pudding. ADRE has captured over 60 deed fraud complaints since November. And by doing so, we have been able to stop over $35 million in homeowners' equity and property values from being stolen. So there is proof that education can stop and can spread the word about not only crime, but the advantages or disadvantages of anything that goes into real estate. So I really was honored to take this deed fraud under my belt and not only educate the public, but our licensees on just what goes into it. And I've worked directly with the Attorney General's office and the victims themselves. And I have learned so much throughout this entire process, and I continue to learn. And everything that I learn, I would like to teach the real estate industry. So it's been wonderful to answer your question, Mandy, and I'm excited to continue to work towards creating preventative measures to stop deed fraud.
And the big thing is, licensees that are listening and the public, it's not only the homeowner that's damaged when the licensee moves forward. The licensee puts marketing time out, money out to advertise. They really go full force in representation of these properties and these people. To not teach them the red flags of when to say no it would be such a detriment to everybody. So thank you, licensees that have been working with the Department of Real Estate to really make this difference continue.
So let's talk about for instructors, they're going to be teaching these classes, but do they need to teach these classes exactly as they have been written?
They don't need to teach the classes exactly as they've been written as long as the objectives on the outline are being met. You can create courses in your own instructional design that fits that criteria of those outlines. But what we're looking for in the education sector is that you're really teaching licensees each area of concern or things that they would need to know regarding water, firewise, and deed fraud.
So that means that they have some kind of latitude for creativity in the way they teach these classes, correct?
Absolutely. We're giving them the framework and the foundation that they need, and they can take it from there and be creative.
So when they go to teach these classes, do they have to teach each 1 hour as a discrete 1 hour? Do they have to teach all 3 in a row? Can they expand these classes and take 1 hour and turn it into a 3 hour? How does that work?
That's a great question. So I think it's about even. I'd say a majority of the schools will go with our paid content and get the presentations and really dive in to say, wow, this is not what I would have built had I not gotten this, the content from the department. But I would say it is 50-50. There are schools that are creating 1 hour courses, and then there's schools that are creating combined 3. It just is whatever fits the school's desires and what they think that their audience is looking for.
So when a school purchases 1 or all 3 of these classes, they're paying for something. What are they paying for? As opposed to the ability to get the free outline that was mentioned earlier. Can you just differentiate what those 2 products are?
Sure. So the free content area outline is basically, like I said, that framework. It gives you the objectives of what we'd like to see in the course. And then the paid content includes a presentation. We created that using PowerPoint slide decks, as well as an expanded outline that goes word for word, line by line, something that you could teach for the entire hour on each area, as well as resources for students. We have links, we have handouts, we have citations, anything that a student would need or would help them better understand whichever topic it is that the course is on, we give it to them in the paid content.
So the paid content is basically a purchase it and present it type of model. They don't have to do any other enhancements if they don't wish to. And there's a script with that, the detailed outline, and then some type of slide deck or illustrations.
Absolutely. That's exactly what that is. But I'd also like to make note, if you purchase the paid content, yes, it's ready to go. You could teach it the next day. However, I think there's a misunderstanding, but I would like to make it very clear that you still have to submit that outline to the department using the ED 102 and the appropriate addenda, just as you would as normal, because the content is owned by the school once you purchase that. So it would be the same process to get the course approved prior to teaching it.
Thank you. So now let's discuss the changes real estate schools and instructors are experiencing when it comes to content approval. Tell us the top 1 or 2 questions or concerns that you are hearing right now.
Well, a couple of concerns is that we're no longer teaching forms that they're used to line by line and how to fill them out. And the big thing to understand is that your brokerage is who decides what documents you use, and the department has continuing education to do with elements of the law and case law, and we're there to teach you what goes into a contract. So to teach line by line and how to just fill in a blank actually does a disservice to the licensee and the person that they are representing. And Commissioner Nicholson says things so well when it comes to what exactly her goals are moving forward in these situations.
So, with regard to the courses no longer being approved that are teaching how to fill in a form line by line, I really envision education as 2 different tracks. There's tracks that your brokerage has decided that you are going to use this set of tools in your toolbox to accomplish your daily tasks. And that may be a group of forms provided to you by an attorney group or by an association or your brokerage's attorneys, whatever is inside your toolbox. And I would expect and hope that brokerages are offering education on how to use the tools in their toolbox. But at the Department of Real Estate, we get the opportunity of 24 hours of our licensees' time over a 2-year period to make sure that licensees have all of the knowledge that they need that we can possibly pump out to them to do a great job for the people of Arizona in real estate transactions. And in an environment where you could have multiple different types of forms, so even if we just talk about purchase contracts, there's association purchase contracts and there's new build purchase contracts. Every licensee should be able to look at any real estate purchase contract and start to dissect that into the elements of contract law, the elements that must be there in order for it to be a valid contract. Every licensee should have the ability to say, there's a body of clauses that would greatly benefit my client if I'm representing a buyer side, or my client if I'm representing a seller side. There's some terms and conditions that should be inside real estate contracts because it's mutually beneficial to all and it makes sense. And that's the bar of what it's going to take to have credit to renew your license. No longer is it going to be, I could have read that form and figured out what to put on the blank line all by myself, and that's going to help you do what you need to do to renew your license. The expectation is more than that. The expectation for the minimal content of our courses is truly an education that enables the licensee to protect the public in any circumstance with any contract in any form out there, and not necessarily something that you could have learned on your own just by sitting down and reading a form and going, okay, it's pretty obvious what goes in that blank. And if you have questions about that, then ask the form creator or ask your broker. That's really the appropriate people to go to when you have questions about the tools that you're utilizing. But we aren't going to offer continuing education credits when the Department of Real Estate is established to protect the public in real estate transactions for teaching licensees how to utilize the tools that their brokerage has selected in order for them to complete the tasks of their job. We're really going back to the fundamental things that are inside the real estate law book, that are inside the statutes of Arizona, that tie back into the case law. And hopefully licensees will be thrilled because they will have continuing education classes that are different than the ones that they have taken for the past 5 years, 2 years, 10 years, 20 years. It's kind of a well-known thing in the real estate industry that licensees will say, gosh, I feel like I've taken this class, the same class every year for 2 years. And it's really time that the Department of Real Estate take a look at what is in the content of these classes that we're approving, and are we doing the best job for the people of Arizona and our licensees?
And all of that is germane, whether you are someone who represents a tenant or a rental property owner or a seller or a buyer, and whether it's agriculture or commercial or manufacturing or residential real estate. So those principles and those laws are important to be emphasized. I think that's a great change. People have been saying AAR contracts are not allowed to be used in the CE classes. We just talked about forms in general, but AAR contracts have gotten a lot of questions coming into this department. Is this true, and what is true?
You want me to take this? It's not true. You can absolutely reference anybody's form when you're teaching the elements of contract law. So if you're teaching an element of what is necessary in a contract because of statute, because of case law, because of administrative code, and you pull out AARs or anyone else's form to say, here's a great example of this, and this is how that could be utilized inside of a document, that's perfectly appropriate in continuing education. What is not appropriate for continuing education is on line 1, put this name, and on line 2, put this name, and on line 3, copy the address, don't get that wrong. On line 4, it's the legal description. Those are things that are just not worthy of continuing education.
So what does a real estate school or instructor need to know when they're submitting their new or their renewal class applications?
I think the main thing that school administrators or instructors, when submitting their applications for approval, is to understand that for us to determine that your course meets the minimal content requirements, We can't base that off of review off of 2 words or a small 3-word sentence. We need to see a detailed outline so we understand exactly what you're teaching. We can't just approve an outline that has 2 words on it and say, yeah, that's a great course. We're looking forward to you teaching that, when in all actuality, we have no idea what you're teaching if you only put 2 words on an outline. So I think that that's the main thing that school administrators need to know when submitting their courses for approval is we now more than ever are taking a deep dive into your outline and looking exactly what you're trying to teach to these licensees, because it is vitally important.
So perhaps much more descriptive than it has been in the past.
Yes, much more descriptive than it has been in the past.
And while we're on the topic of education, Elena, don't you think it's important for them to know Arizona revised statutes a little bit? So let's dive in. Everybody on the podcast, if you're taking notes, write this down. ARS 322135, which deeply goes into what the department may or may not do when it comes to course approvals. And if you look at Section E, it says the commissioner may determine minimal content requirements for approving educational courses and appropriate professional qualifications for approving instructors to teach individual education courses. So our minimal requirements in this administration under Commissioner Nicholson is we want the details and the information that the licensee will learn that will be better for the public. It's all about the betterment for the public when it comes to licensees serving or the Department of Real Estate looking at course approvals. So help us understand what that end result and that end goal is and how you're going to get there in your continuing education course.
You bring up a great point, Mandy. Also in the Arizona Administrative Code R428402, that also explains what each category entails. So when we're reviewing outlines, we're also looking back and comparing your outline to the respective subject or category that you're receiving CE credit for. So we're looking just to make sure that those requirements are met in rule as well.
So that was AAC R4-28-402, which goes over every category in continuing education and exactly what the requirements are.
Exactly.
So Mandy, we're going to go over to you again because you have been working very hard at updating the salesperson pre-licensing classes and the tests, those things that you take, and you'd have to take that test through Pearson VUE. Please describe those updates and those changes.
Absolutely. Geez, thanks for asking, Liz. Pre-licensing is the foundation of how you obtain your license, and then you're out there performing licensed activities. First of all, let us start by saying that this department's license covers so much more than just residential real estate, which is where I came from and my heart always was. So I saw that so clearly, but it also encompasses timeshares and commercial and agriculture, like you brought up, and so many other realms. So we're really diving deep and redoing the pre-license exam. So when you obtain your real estate license for the first time at a bare minimum, you know how to represent somebody. You will need to go to your broker and learn the tools of the toolbox and what your broker wants you to utilize, but you know the basics of representation. You understand core competencies. You understand reasonable skill and care. More importantly, you really understand what it takes to become an advocate for someone through your fiduciary duties and how to deal fairly with the other side. So Commissioner Nicholson asked me to look at our pre-licensing exam. We're about 380 new items deep into it, where Pearson VUE has reviewed those items. For the people that don't know, an item is considered a question, but it doesn't all come in a form of a question. So I'm learning a whole new language. It's been about 1 year and 3 months that I've now been involved in taking on this task. And I have learned so much along the way. And we will be wrapping up our items that are to be turned into Pearson VUE this summer. So hopefully in the first quarter of 2025, we will have a higher level of competency from a practitioner who comes out of pre-licensing. Also, something I am so excited about. Once we have that exam approved, we'll be moving from one exam in Arizona to 2 parts. We'll have a national part called RELO certified, and we'll have a state section, and then we'll start working on the reciprocity with other states. So that way, if you move to another state, hopefully we'll be able to work with them. So you only have to take their state specific area as well. And on top of that, in Arizona especially, we'll be able to offer that national exam in 2 languages, Spanish and English. And that is such a big deal to understand that everybody has a different framework and how you ask a question matters. So we'll be able to serve a larger part of our population.
Those are great improvements.
In the name of DRT, Direct Real Talk, I think out of the thousands of people that all of us in this room have spoke to, when we ask the question, how many of you after taking the pre-license exam knew what they were doing when they got into the field? And not one hand is raised. So real talk, I don't think that old test actually teaches you what to do once you pass the exam and get into the industry. Do you guys agree?
Well, it teaches us 43,560 square feet in an acre, Elena. Do you remember that, right?
I sure did.
Do you guys remember how to calculate an acre foot of water?
No, but I do remember a setback.
Okay, so there will also be a new upcoming, you sort of touched on this, the BMC3 for property management. For those brokers, can you just give us a quick little overview, tell us what it covers and who should be taking it, and can any of the brokers take that?
Oh, I encourage everybody to take courses that they're interested in, even if they're not mandatory for your license. But BMC 3B will be directly for commissioner rules as we know it today. Hopefully after the rule review change, we will have that called Arizona Administrative Code. And it will go into trust accounting, what you need to know as a property manager, what is a trust account, what monies go in there, how to handle audits. It's going to go so deep into understanding three-way reconciliations. The big thing to understand with that whole section of law is that the most spelt out area of our law book is property management. But yet it was so ambiguous just before last legislative session because it kept relying on just the word GAAP, which people pronounce as GAAP, and that's generally accepted accounting principles, which is the language of accounting. However, it's 10 principles that basically say don't steal people's money and be transparent. But yet our own property managers couldn't follow it because when we looked at things, it wasn't transparent. It was actually quite ambiguous, which is why the department for so long has focused in property management, because you're dealing with other people's monies, other people's properties. And so we want BMC 3B to be able to teach property managers how to be in compliance. Because as Commissioner Nicholson always says, 9 out of 10 people want to do the right thing. They just don't know how to do it. So we want to help. And because of the last legislative session, which we'll get into in a different discussion, a different day in SB 1171, which you can look up at azledge.gov. Again, that's SB 1171. We no longer reference GAAP. It needs to be known. We reference what a three-way reconciliation is. So now it's time to get out there and really teach property managers how to protect their clients and deal fairly with the tenants and to take care of other people's assets.
And this is property management, whether it is residential or commercial, correct?
Yes, it is property management. Trust accounting is the main focus. It is true that most complaints that come into the department, so a lot of the focus of the department is usually the residential side, because that's what the Arizona Landlord Tenant Act really encompasses. But we're not going to go into the act. We are really going to try to stay focused on the numbers and how to deal with trust accounting, which should be the same over commercial or residential or multifamily.
So to just sort of illuminate for those who may not know, what is property management?
Oh my gosh. What is property management? Well, for all you property managers out there, let me just say I thank you. You have a very hard job and there's no upswing typically of a good deed. So knowing that, it's a very hard career field where somebody goes out and they act as for the owner of the property. They act basically in the presence of the landlord, and they have certain obedient instructions, lawful instructions from their landlord of what they can and cannot do. But the most of what they're doing is handling that landlord or that tenant's monies. So we're talking about security deposits, cleaning fees, rental lease fees every single month, and how that money's handled is extremely important. And that's sometimes where the oopsies come in. It's depositing, it's giving the right vendors the right cash flow. It's really acting on behalf of that owner. So you want to be extremely careful, because in trust accounting, it's not your money as the property manager, it's the owner's money or the tenant's monies, depending on how the lease is written. And you have to be extremely careful of who gets paid out of that trust account, what those reports look like, and then when the property manager's agreement ends or lease ends, how is that remittance of payments? How is that disposition of deposits handled? That all is part of trust accounting, and there's a timeline to it, and it's a really big deal in statute. So I advise everyone that is involved in owning a property, that's involved in renting a property, or that chooses to be a property manager, really to know the ins and outs of all of what it takes for somebody to handle your cash flow, which is very spelled out in our book and chapter.
So when do you expect this class to roll out?
I wish I could have rolled it out yesterday, but honestly, we've all been working so diligently on it, and we just had our final team approval on our content outline that will be released here in the next month to all the schools, and then it will become a mandatory class for anybody that is a broker with delegated authority within a property management company or a designated broker within a property management company to take after July 1st, 2025 to renew their license.
Okay, so our last question before we leave, is there something from what we've discussed today that you would like people to remember or to know?
I would like people to know that we are trying to equip our licensees with the knowledge that could literally save a person's home. If a licensee understands Firewise, for example, and they understand that, grasses are bad close to a structure because that is fuel for the flame, and they can educate a buyer and a seller in a real estate transaction, and that fuel can be removed as maybe even part of the real estate transaction, it could happen. What if that is what saved that structure? What if that is what saved that person's home? And to enable real estate licensees to have this type of knowledge to be able to share with their clients, there's hardly any other professions that are out there that deal with something as valuable as a person's home. It's more than just a roof over their head, right? It's the place where all these memories are made, and it's stability. It's the number one contributing factor to generational wealth in the United States of America. And we want our licensees to have every single tool available in the tool belt with the 24 hours that you already have to give me 24 hours out of your life every 2 years to attend education. I want that education to be the best education that you can possibly receive so that you can go out there and do the best job for the people of Arizona. And I'm going to keep pushing for that goal to happen.
Well, thank you all very much for being here today.
I hope you enjoyed meeting Mandy and Elena and reconnecting with Commissioner Nicholson. As you can see, real estate education is a priority at the department, and with all the changes some licensees are experiencing, it is helpful to go back to basics for all licensees so that the public is better served and a licensee can build a more sustainable business. The Department Education Town Hall will be October 9th from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. Licensees, instructors, school administrators, and the public are invited to attend the town hall. This will be a hybrid event, and you can find more details and register to attend in person or virtually at azre.gov. Also coming this fall, an education workshop designed to answer questions from real estate educators. Watch the Arizona Department of Real Estate website for more details coming soon. Join me next time for a discussion of subdivisions with the DRE Subdivision and Development Team. I'm Liz Recchia. Thanks for joining me today. And remember, keep up, keep current with ADRE.